The desert creates stories because the desert distorts certainty. In a landscape this immense and indifferent, folklore is not entertainment, it's orientation. It's how human beings leave emotional landmarks in places too large to fully possess. Out here in the American Southwest, even the absurd begins to feel plausible. I'm Mark Schauer, and this is Dispatches from the Lost Republic. The jackalope, that impossible hybrid of rabbit and antelope, belongs perfectly to this landscape. Part prank, part frontier mythology, it feels less invented than discovered. A creature someone might glimpse at dusk while driving a lonely highway between distant towns. But despite its fame, the jackalope was never immortalized on American postage. Instead, the United States issued stamps for a different kind of folklore, stories that had already passed from local memory into national myth. The strangest of them all depicted a rider with no head. The headless horseman stamp drew from the legend of Sleepy Hollow, a story so embedded in American culture that it feels ancient, almost colonial folklore handed down from campfires and taverns. But Washington Irving wrote the tale while living in England. And if that seems strange, remember that the Jungle Book was written by Rudyard Kipling when he was living in Vermont. Distance sometimes sharpens mythology. Exile, travel, and nostalgia allow writers to compress a nation into symbols. Irving transformed the Hudson Valley into something dreamlike and haunted, a place where the young republic still carried the shadows of Europe behind it. And the Headless Horseman itself feels like an ideal symbol for the uneasy early republic. Violent, unresolved, riding endlessly through the dark looking for something lost. From there, the folklore stamps moved through several versions of America's remembered self. Tom Sawyer gives us the river childhood of the republic: mischief, freedom, performance, escape. Mark Twain's boy is not heroic in the formal sense. He's slippery, theatrical, allergic to duty, and yet somehow deeply American. He belongs to fences, caves, steamboats, and summer afternoons that seem to stretch forever. Grandma Moses offered a different folklore, not a tall tale, but memory turned into image. Her paintings made rural America look both ordinary and enchanted. Sleigh rides, farms, holidays, fields, villages. She represented the folk artist as national witness, someone who preserved a vanishing world not through monuments, but through remembered color. Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett take the series toward the frontier, though in different keys. Boone is the older myth, the pathfinder, the hunter, the man moving through the forest before settlement catches up. He stands for the shadowy edge of colonial and early American expansion, the doorway through the Appalachian Mountains, the passage from seaboard republic to continental ambition. Crockett, on the other hand, is louder, more theatrical, already half media figure in his own lifetime. Frontiersman, congressman, storyteller, martyr of the Alamo. His legend is less wilderness solitude than democratic performance. And then there's Johnny Appleseed. Of all these figures, he may be the gentlest. Not a soldier, not a gunfighter, not a ghost, a wanderer with seeds, a barefoot apostle of orchards. His story turns expansion into something almost pastoral, as if the Western movement could be remembered not by conquest, but by planning. When I was a very young boy, my family visited the Hermitage, the home of Andrew Jackson. Somewhere on the ground stood an apple tree, and my father told me it had been planted by Johnny Appleseed himself. Of course, I believed it completely. Imagine my dismay years later when I learned that John Chapman, The real Johnny Appleseed planted trees in only 6 counties in Ohio and Indiana. But maybe that disappointment misses the point. Folklore expands to fill a nation. Once a figure passes into collective memory, geography becomes secondary. Americans wanted Johnny Appleseed everywhere, in Tennessee, in Illinois, in Arizona, anywhere orchards, roads, and memory might meet the horizon. Taken together, these stamps form something unusual, a miniature archive of how Americans once mythologized themselves, not only through presidents or battles, through ghosts, young boys, wanderers, painters, pathfinders, storytellers, people larger than life because the country itself seemed larger than life. I'm Mark Schauer, and this is Dispatches from the Lost Republic.